Up there. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Shays and I have participated in dozens and dozens of hours of hearings. And I have to say that this is the most peculiar process that I've ever seen in my life. Something is wrong here. We have evidence that over 26% of Gulf War vets were made casualties. That's probably the largest number in any war on history. Dr. Hall tells us that he recently went to a meeting and that over 92 people were present who had identical physical symptoms. I have talked to Gulf War veterans in the state of Vermont around the room where they tell me when they walk into a grocery store and they smell detergents or perfume, they get sick. We have heard, Chris and I have heard people come forward here with terrible, terrible illnesses. That's one reality that Chris Shays and I and other members of this committee have heard for years. And then there's another reality that seems to come from the officials is, we have heard today from Dr. Heinrich that they have 80,000 reported, 80,000 soldiers have reported symptoms, significantly less than the number that Mr. Binns made. But number two, we have 241 federally funded projects spending $247 million. Dr. Heinrich, is there a Gulf War illness?
The experts that we spoke with, sir, have said that there is unusual symptoms and that they still cannot identify the cause. But it's also clear to us that they are doing studies to try to further identify what that might be.
Thank you. That's it. And that's the insanity that we're dealing with. $247 million, and your researchers have come up with the fact that there are symptoms. Hey, you could have saved a lot of money. Chris Shays and I knew that there were symptoms. Mr. Bunk, are there symptoms? Yes. Mr. Robinson, are there symptoms?
Absolutely.
Good. We don't have to pay them $247 million. So what are we doing? I have concluded, and I don't mean this to be a mean statement to the members of the DOD, because I know in their hearts they certainly want all veterans to get a fair shake and to be well, but something very strange is going on. I do not know why, from day one, the DOD, to a lesser degree the VA, but both institutions have been resistant to the very serious crisis that we are facing and the pain that is going on. And I would agree, for a start, with Mr. Bunker, who made a very simple statement, and he said we should get the research money out of the VA and the DOD. I think that's right. Now let me ask, again, Dr. Heinrich, a very simple question. I want to get to Mr. Binns. Dr. Haley, who is a researcher who's be testifying later on, this is what he says in his report that he's going to tell us later. He says, quote, I am encouraged at the progress that has been made in understanding the new type of brain cell damage that appears to underlie Gulf War veterans' symptoms, end of quote. Is he crazy? Now, he's been saying this for years. What do you say? And he hasn't spent $243 million. Is he right? Is he wrong?
He's right.
What we have seen and what experts have said to us is that there are concerns that there is neurological damage, and I think that that's one reason you'll hear the VA talk about new efforts to fund studies that are really focusing on neurodegeneration.
But he has gone beyond concerns that there may be neurological damage. He has gone a lot further than that, and it is incredible to me and to the taxpayers of this country and to all of the people who are concerned about our veterans that the VA and the DOD have done so very little. Mr. Binns, I want to thank you. I mean, I know I'm not a great fan of President Bush, let me tell you that. But I think that in appointing you and Anthony Principi, we have some serious people who are trying to deal with this issue. From your point of view, give us some understanding of why the government has been so lax in coming up with an understanding of the cause or some kind of treatment, despite the not insignificant sum of money. Where do you think we should be going from here?
Is it on? Yep. Here. I can't answer the question of why they haven't gotten with the program.
How
It
would
is-
you assess $243 million being spent with the results that we've seen?
The program has been, a lot of the money has been spent in areas which, at least today, we can conclude, and earlier you might have been prepared to conclude, were not the areas that would lead to the most promising answers. For example, as recently as 2003, the VA budget in that year, according to the recent report to Congress, provided for about $4.1 million in Gulf War illnesses research. Of that amount, 57% went to study stress and other psychological causes. 17% went to study things like web-based training for VA physicians on bioterrorism events. So only 17% actually went for things that we believe are directly related.
We don't
to
have a
illness.
lot of time. See, look, I don't mean to be rude.
Okay.
Based on all of the evidence, do you agree or disagree with Mr. Bunker, who basically is saying, look, we need research, these guys are not going to do it, we should get it out of the VA and the DOD?
I would have agreed with you 4 months ago, but Secretary Principi, as I'm sure the representatives here from VA will attest, is very concerned about this issue. I wish I could guarantee that Secretary Principi would be the Secretary of Veterans Affairs for the next 20 years or so. We are going to have a good program that is very accelerated coming out of VA. Whether it can continue and whether there is a sustained effort depends upon many factors, as you well know. So I think if you want to guarantee that there will be this kind of effort, both from VA and DOD, Congress would need to make it a line item budget that there be Gulf War illnesses research.
But you see, you can appreciate the frustration that we feel. $243 million is not an insignificant sum of money.
Yeah.
And the question is, you heard from Dr. Heinrich, basically, they've done very little with this money. So I think the question is not that there should not be money, but should we be saying, look, for whatever reason, the DOD is certainly not going to do it. Maybe the VA will do something, but we've got to get out of Capitol Hill and start finding serious researchers in the private sector, who, by the way, if I'm not mistaken, I don't mean to be personal here, but I think you came into this issue out of family issues because you saw a correlation between a family member and the illness that our veterans were seeing. Is that correct?
Yes, and I think that you're right in saying that there needs to be a mix, I believe, of VA and outside research. The limitation of VA research is that they can only fund VA physicians. Obviously, that is where the veterans are, so there should be a substantial investment there. And as I said, I believe they're about to do that. On the other hand, you need to have, I don't know who is the one to do it, NIH or DOD, but you need to have some agency with the capability of funding the best talent available outside of the federal government. And you need to have a total funding commitment that is at least the level of the historical levels of commitment. Because this time, I'm naive perhaps, but I believe that at least it's happening at VA, and I think I see it happening in other agencies as well. I don't believe it will be wasted.
In your judgment, is Dr. Haley making some important breakthroughs?
Dr. Haley has been the guy out there with the spear advancing on this evil for many, many years. He's made continued advances. Today, I would say he's got squads of troops behind him, and he's got other people in the woods that you'll be hearing from later on who really represent the heavy artillery that are willing to come into this data area.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, how am I doing on time? Am I...
You got another minute and a half.
Okay. Let me say, I mean, there's some good news, is that some breakthroughs are being made. Unfortunately, they have not been made within the DOD, and largely, and by the way, I have a lot of affection and respect for Anthony Principi as well, and I know his heart is in the right place on this. But I think we owe it to our veterans not just to throw money out there, but to target that money to serious people within the VA, within the private sector, and some of our universities who are prepared to work with non-government researchers to begin to advance some of the ideas that are beginning to be developed. Dr. Hall, let me just get back to you. What I heard you say is that not a whole lot more is happening in the UK. Is that your perception?
That's correct. That's correct, sir. I think we face the same sort of problems in that the money that's being spent is being utilized by people who you may describe as being in the employ of central government. They are simply government lackeys who produce what the government wish to hear. There seems to be no independent research going on, or if there is, it isn't breaking through the press barrier to get free publication.
Repeat, the chairman has asked me, when you mentioned 92 people with identical physical symptoms at a meeting, how many people were at the meeting?
200. I wrote down...
Is that in your...
approximately 50,000 people deployed, of which 5,000 have reported symptoms, 1,500 are members of the NGVFA, 200 were at the AGM, and of those 200, 92 people who could take my place.
And what does your government say when you present them with this information?
I have recent correspondence from my Prime Minister decrying that this syndrome exists. And that's correct as of 2 weeks ago.
Denying? What, decrying? What was the word?
Denying that this syndrome exists. My ill health problems are officially denied.
So the government, the official position of the government of the UK is that...
illness does not exist. It is imaginary, yet I have X-ray proof, I have MRI scans, my blood chemistry is deranged. I'm now pre-leukemic. That is not an imaginary condition.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman. At this time, we'll go to Mr. Turner and then to Mr. Chairman.